shadows, and silk. The waiting room of Blackwood Innovations felt more like an art gallery than the lobby of the country's most cutting-edge medical technology company. Nora Winters shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Her worn leather bag clutched tightly in her lap. The receptionist hadn't looked up once since Nora had given her name 30 minutes ago. "Ms. Winters?" A tall woman with a sleek silver bob appeared. "Mr. Blackwood will see you now." Nora followed her through a maze of glass hallways, her physical therapist's instincts cataloging the woman's perfect posture. Everyone in this building seemed to move with the same efficient precision, like parts of a well-oiled machine. "Wait here." The woman gestured to a chair outside massive ebony doors before disappearing. Nora checked her phone. Another text from the hospital. "Payment overdue. Treatment schedule at risk of cancellation." Her throat tightened. Her father had 3 months, maybe less, without this experimental treatment. She'd exhausted every option. Second mortgage on her small house, credit cards maxed, even the GoFundMe her coworkers had set up. Nothing came close to the $300,000 needed. The doors opened silently. Vincent Blackwood stood at the window, a silhouette against the panoramic view of the city. He didn't turn when she entered. "Mr. Blackwood? I'm Nora Winters. Thank you for... Your father has stage 4 pancreatic cancer." His voice was deep, detached. "He's been approved for Dr. Rosenthal's nanotherapy trial, but your insurance won't cover experimental treatments." Nora swallowed. "How did you... I own the hospital." He turned finally. Vincent Blackwood was younger than she'd expected from his reputation, perhaps mid-30s, with sharp features and eyes so dark they appeared almost black. "Your father's oncologist, Dr. Patel, brought your case to my attention." "I don't understand." "Sit down, Ms. Winters." She did, watching as he took his own seat behind a desk that seemed carved from a single piece of obsidian. "I'm interested in your father's case. The nanotherapy has a 47% success rate in cases like his. I want to make it 100%. "He's not a lab rat," Nora said, immediately regretting her sharpness. Something flickered across Blackwood's face. Surprise, perhaps. "No, he's data. Valuable data." He slid a tablet across the desk. On it was a contract, the amount at the top making her breath catch. $500,000. Enough for the treatment and aftercare. "In exchange, I want 1 year of your time. You're a physical therapist specializing in neurological rehabilitation. I need your expertise for a project. Why not just hire me normally? Because what I'm developing isn't public. And because normal employees can leave." His eyes held hers. "This arrangement guarantees your commitment." Nora's hands trembled as she scrolled through the document. "You want me to live on site? At your research facility? The northern wing has private apartments. You'll have weekends to visit your father. This is indentured servitude. This is opportunity." He leaned forward. "Your father gets the best care available. You get exclusive access to technology no other therapist has touched, and I get your undivided attention for my project." Nora looked up from the contract, studying the man across from her. There was something beneath his coldness, an intensity that unsettled her. "What exactly would I be working on?" "Sign first. Then I'll show you." The weight of her father's last hospital stay pressed on her shoulders. His fragile smile this morning when she'd promised everything would be okay. "I need to think about this." "You have until tomorrow," Blackwood said, standing. "The treatment starts next week, with or without you." As the elevator descended, Nora clutched the tablet, the contract still open on the screen. The building's reflection distorted in the glass, stretching and twisting like the impossible choice before her. Her phone buzzed with another hospital notification. With shaking fingers, she opened the attachment. Her father's latest scan, the shadows in his abdomen larger than before. Sometimes survival came at a price. Sometimes tomorrow cost everything today. Gilded chains. The northern wing of Blackwood Innovations stretched like a glass arm into the surrounding forest, the structure seamlessly blending with the pines that surrounded it. Nora's apartment, prison, sanctuary, she wasn't sure which, overlooked a small lake. Morning mist still clinging to its surface as she prepared for her first day. Her father's voice echoed from their call last night. "You didn't have to do this, sweetheart." But the relief in his eyes when she told him the treatment was approved had confirmed she'd made the right choice. 1 year of her life for the rest of his... It was simple mathematics. "Good morning, Ms. Winters." The AI system Vincent had called Lena greeted her. "Mr. Blackwood requests your presence in Lab 3 at 8 a.m. Nora followed the subtle lighting that guided her through the complex, marveling despite herself at the technology integrated into every surface. Workers in various departments nodded respectfully as she passed, her access badge marking her as something different. Not quite employee, not quite guest. Lab 3 was hidden behind biometric security that scanned her retina before the doors hissed open. Inside, the space opened into a cavernous room dominated by equipment she'd never seen before. And in the center, Vincent Blackwood stood next to what looked like an advanced exoskeleton suspended from the ceiling. "You're punctual," he said, not looking up from his tablet. "That's good." "Hard to be late when an AI wakes you," Nora replied, approaching cautiously. "Is this what I'll be working on? An exoskeleton?" Vincent finally looked at her, those dark eyes assessing. "Not just any exoskeleton. This is Prometheus, a neural integrated mobility system for complete spinal rehabilitation." Nora circled the device, professional interest overriding her reservations. "The actuators are smaller than anything I've seen. How are you powering them?" "Graphene supercapacitors. They charge in minutes and last for hours." He watched her examine the technology. "Your expertise is in neuroplasticity and retraining motor pathways after trauma. I need that knowledge. For this, there are dozens of researchers more qualified, none with your specific combination of skills and..." He paused. "Motivation." The implication hung between them. Her father. The contract. The invisible chains that bound her here. "When do we start?" she asked, straightening her shoulders. "Now," Vincent said, gesturing to a conference room visible through internal glass walls. "Meet your team." 5 people waited inside, all wearing the same serious expression. Vincent introduced them rapidly. Dr. Josephine Weber, neuroscientist. Thomas Feng, biomechanical engineer. Daria Volkov, AI specialist. Patrick O'Neill, prosthetics designer. And Russell Hammond, physical therapy technician. "Nora will be leading the rehabilitation protocols," Vincent announced. "Her work takes priority." Dr. Weber's eyebrows rose slightly. "But the neural mapping sequence will proceed according to Ms. Winter's recommendations," Vincent finished, his tone brooking no argument. After the meeting, Vincent led her to a smaller lab adjacent to the main space. "This is yours. Whatever equipment you need, whatever resources, just ask Lena." "Why me?" Nora asked abruptly. "The truth this time?" Vincent paused at the doorway. For a moment, something vulnerable flickered behind his mask of authority. "Your thesis on autonomic nervous system retraining after severe trauma. Your clinical trial with the paraplegia patients at Metropolitan Hospital. Your case study of the young girl who walked again after her sailing accident." He met her gaze steadily. "Your methods work when others fail. That doesn't explain the secrecy, the contract, any of this." She gestured around them. "I have competitors who would kill for this technology," he said, "and patients who will die without it." Something in his voice made her look closer. The shadows under his eyes, the tension in his jaw, this wasn't just business for him. "Who is it?" she asked softly. "Who are you trying to save?" Vincent's expression hardened instantly. "Your father's first treatment is tomorrow. I've arranged for you to be there." He turned to leave. "Be ready at 7 a.m. That night, Nora explored her new home. The apartment was beautiful but impersonal, like an upscale hotel suite. In the bedroom closet, she found a wardrobe of clothing in her exact size. All new, all expensive. The refrigerator was stocked with her preferred foods, right down to the specific brand of Greek yogurt she bought weekly. The thoroughness of Vincent's research into her life was unsettling. She was a project to him, a means to an end, just like the exoskeleton in the lab. As she unpacked the few personal items she'd brought, her fingers brushed against the small framed photo of her father. In it, he stood tall and strong on a mountain summit, arms outstretched to the sky, before the cancer, before the pain. "I'll get you back there, Dad," she whispered, placing the photo on her nightstand. "Whatever it takes." Outside her window, the lake reflected the facility's lights, rippling with the evening breeze. Beyond the water, the forest stood dark and impenetrable. For a year, this would be her world. These walls, these people, this purpose. And at its center, the enigmatic Vincent Blackwood, a man building miracles for reasons he kept locked away as tightly as the secrets in Lab 3. Fractured glass. 3 months into her contract, Nora had settled into an uneasy rhythm. Weekdays were consumed by the Prometheus project, which was advancing faster than anyone had anticipated. Weekends were spent at her father's side, watching with quiet joy as the nanotherapy gradually shrank the shadows in his scans. "You look tired," her father remarked during her latest visit, his own color better than it had been in months. "Is he working you too hard?" Nora smiled, adjusting his pillows. "I'm working myself hard. The project is important." More important than she'd initially realized. Each breakthrough in the lab brought them closer to a technology that could help thousands of patients with spinal cord injuries, patients who had been told, like her father, that there was no hope. What she couldn't tell her father was how Vincent Blackwood had become an enigma she couldn't solve. Some days he was brilliantly engaged, working alongside the team until early morning hours, his insights pushing them past seemingly impossible barriers. Other days he disappeared entirely, leaving cryptic instructions before vanishing for hours. On this particular Monday, Vincent had missed the weekly progress meeting, again. With the first human trial scheduled in just 2 months, the team couldn't afford delays. "Lena," Nora called out in the empty lab. "Where is Mr. Blackwood?" "Mr. Blackwood is in his private residence, Ms. Winters. He has activated privacy protocols." Nora sighed, gathering the test results she needed his approval on. "Can you at least tell him I need his signature on these trial parameters?" "I will relay your message." An hour passed with no response. The rest of the team had left for the day, and the decision couldn't wait until morning. Taking a deep breath, Nora headed toward the section of the facility she'd never visited, the West Wing where Vincent lived. Using her access badge, she navigated the increasingly quiet hallways until she reached a simple black door with no markings. She hesitated, then knocked firmly. No answer. "Lena, is Mr. Blackwood inside?" "Yes, Miss Winters. However, his vital signs indicate." The door suddenly opened. Vincent stood before her, his normally impeccable appearance disheveled. He gripped the doorframe with white knuckles. "What do you want?" His voice was rough, almost slurred. Are you drunk?" Nora asked incredulously. "Spectacularly," he confirmed, stepping back to allow her entry with an exaggerated gesture. "Welcome to my humble abode." All 16,000 square feet of emptiness. The space before her was unexpectedly sparse for someone of his wealth. Minimalist furniture, walls lined with books rather than art, and everywhere, screens displaying data, news, medical journals. Vincent collapsed onto a sofa, grabbing a half-empty bottle from a side table. "You brought work. How dedicated." "These need your approval," Nora said, placing the documents on the coffee table. "The team can't proceed without my signature. Without my money. Without my permission?" He laughed bitterly. "That's all anyone ever needs from me." Nora stepped forward, her medical training kicking in as she noticed the pallor of his skin. "When was the last time you ate?" "Or slept?" He waved dismissively. "Irrelevant, not to Prometheus. We need you functional." "Always about the project," he murmured, his gaze drifting to a single-framed photograph on a nearby shelf, the only personal item in sight. Following his gaze, Nora moved toward it. A young woman smiled from the frame, her resemblance to Vincent unmistakable. The same dark eyes, the same determined set of the jaw. "My sister," Vincent said quietly. "Olivia?" Nora picked up the photograph. The woman sat in a wheelchair, but her smile radiated a fierce joy. "She's beautiful." "Was," Vincent corrected, his voice hollow. "Today was her birthday," understanding dawned. "The Prometheus project." "It's for her. Too late for her." He stared into his glass. "She died 3 years ago." Spinal cord injury from a climbing accident. C4 complete. The doctors said she'd never move below her shoulders again. But she did, Nora said, looking closer at the photograph. I can see it in her posture. She regained some function. Vincent's eyes locked with hers, surprise momentarily breaking through his inebriation. Yes, through experimental therapy we developed together. She regained movement in her shoulders, some in her arms. We were making progress, creating the first prototype of what became Prometheus. What happened? Nora asked gently. Pneumonia, his voice cracked. A simple infection. Her compromised respiratory function couldn't fight it off. I was in Japan, negotiating with investors for the next phase of research. She died alone. The raw pain in his voice stripped away the image of the cold billionaire she'd constructed. Before her sat just a man, brilliant and broken, using his wealth and power to ensure no one else suffered his sister's fate. So now you know, he said, suddenly defensive. The great Vincent Blackwood's secret motivation. Not profit, not glory, just failure. Spectacular, unforgivable failure. Nora sat beside him, taking the glass from his unresisting fingers. It wasn't your fault. Tell that to Olivia. I would, Nora said firmly. I'd tell her how her brother has dedicated everything to finishing what you started together. How he's going to help thousands of patients like her. Vincent looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. You believe that? I've seen the data. I've worked with the prototype. Prometheus works, Vincent. Olivia's work. Your work. It matters. Something shifted between them in that moment. The employer and the contracted employee fading away, leaving just two people connected by understanding and shared purpose. You should get some sleep, Nora said, standing. Tomorrow we're testing the neural feedback algorithms. Vincent nodded, suddenly looking exhausted as the alcohol and emotion took their toll. Nora, he called as she reached the door. Thank you. For what? For seeing the person, not just the project. She smiled slightly. Get some rest, Mr. Blackwood. We have lives to change. As the door closed behind her, Nora leaned against the wall, her heart racing unexpectedly. The man behind the contract was infinitely more complex than she'd imagined, and infinitely more dangerous to her resolute detachment. Unwritten rules. Your father's scans are clear. Dr. Patel's words hung in the air of the hospital consultation room like suspended miracles. Beside Nora, her father gripped her hand, tears streaming freely down his cheeks. Clear? As in, no detectable cancer cells, Dr. Patel confirmed, her smile broad. The nanotherapy targeted every metastasis. We'll continue monitoring, of course, but clinically speaking, Thomas is in remission. The drive back to her father's house passed in a blur of tearful celebration calls to family and friends. As Nora helped him settle into his favorite armchair, she noticed his thoughtful expression. What's on your mind, Dad? This is good news. The best, he agreed, taking her hand. Which is why I think it's time you reconsidered that contract of yours. Nora tensed. What do you mean? Sweetheart, you sacrificed your freedom for my treatment. But I'm better now. You don't need to stay bound to Blackwood anymore. It's not that simple, she began, isn't it? Tell him you want out. What's he going to do, take back my treatment? It's already done. Nora turned away, unable to meet her father's eyes. How could she explain that leaving Blackwood Innovations no longer felt like escaping a prison? That the work had become her passion? That Vincent had become... Unless, her father said softly, realization dawning. There's another reason you want to stay. The project is important, she insisted. We're 2 months from the first human trial. Thomas Winters studied his daughter's face. And Vincent Blackwood? Is he just your boss? It's complicated, Nora admitted. He's brilliant, driven, but wounded in ways I'm just beginning to understand. The project means everything to him. And to you? Before she could answer, her phone chimed with an urgent message from Thomas Fung. Emergency at the lab. Prototype malfunction during final testing. Vincent injured. Come back immediately. I have to go, she said, already gathering her coat. It's an emergency. Her father nodded, understanding in his eyes. Be careful, Nora, not just with whatever's happening at the lab. The facility was in chaos when she arrived. Emergency medical personnel crowded the main laboratory, equipment pushed aside to make room for a gurney. "What happened?" she demanded, finding Josephine among the onlookers. Vincent was testing the neural interface himself, something he's expressly forbidden any of us from doing, the neuroscientist explained. The feedback loop amplified unexpectedly. Electrical surge through the cerebral implant. "He has an implant?" Nora felt her world tilt. "Since when?" "Since before you arrived," Josephine said grimly. "It's how he's been testing the neural mapping algorithms personally." Vincent lay unconscious as the medical team stabilized him for transport. Nora pushed forward, her medical training taking over as she checked his pupils, his pulse. "I'm going with him," she announced as they wheeled him toward the helipad where a medical evacuation helicopter waited. "Ms. Winters," the facility's security chief intercepted her. "Protocol states—" "I don't care about protocol," she snapped. "I'm his rehabilitation specialist." 4 hours later, she sat beside Vincent's hospital bed, the private room silent except for the steady beep of monitors. The doctors had induced a coma to allow his brain to recover from the electrical trauma. Nora reviewed his medical chart for the dozenth time, trying to process what she'd learned. Vincent hadn't just been developing Prometheus, he'd been testing it on himself, implanting experimental technology directly into his own nervous system. "You reckless, brilliant idiot," she whispered, taking his unresponsive hand. The door opened as Russell Hammond entered with coffee. "Any change?" "No," Nora sighed. "The neurologist says the swelling is decreasing, but they won't know about damage until he wakes up." Russell handed her a cup. "The team's in shambles. Without Vincent?" "We continue," Nora said firmly. "That's what he would want. The trial can't be delayed." "You're right." Russell nodded, then hesitated. "Nora, there's something you should know." Before the accident, Vincent was meeting with the legal team. "About your contract," her heart stuttered. "What about it?" "He was preparing to release you from it. With your father in remission, he felt you should have the choice to stay or go." The revelation hit her like a physical blow. Vincent had been ready to set her free, even knowing she might leave the project. Leave him. As Russell departed, Nora moved her chair closer to Vincent's bedside. In sleep, the lines of tension that usually marked his face had smoothed, making him look younger, vulnerable. "I wouldn't have left," she told him softly, knowing he couldn't hear. "Not the project. Not you." Days blurred together as Nora divided her time between the hospital and the laboratory, driving the team forward while Vincent remained unconscious. On the 5th night, as she dozed in the chair beside his bed, her hand still holding his, she felt a slight pressure against her fingers. Her eyes flew open to find Vincent watching her, conscious and alert. "You're here," he said, his voice hoarse from disuse. "Of course I'm here," she replied, hitting the call button for the nurse. "You nearly fried your genius brain." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "The prototype?" "Damage beyond repair," she said sternly. "Like you almost were." "What were you thinking, Vincent? An experimental neural implant? It was the only way to perfect the interface." His eyes never left hers. "Russell told me about my father. The remission." "I'm so glad, Nora." She swallowed hard. "Russell told me something, too. About you planning to release me from my contract." Vincent attempted to sit up, wincing with the effort. "You've fulfilled your part of our bargain. Your father as well. You should be free to choose your own path." "And if my path is Prometheus? If it's Blackwood Innovations?" She took a deep breath. "If it's you?" The monitors betrayed the sudden acceleration of his heart rate. "Nora, I've never been good at—" "Neither have I," she interrupted, smiling through tears she hadn't realized were falling. "But I think we could learn. No contracts this time. No signatures binding us. Just choice." Vincent reached up, his hand trembling slightly as it touched her cheek. "I've never deserved someone like you in my life." "Good thing it's not about deserving," she whispered. "It's about what we build together." The medical team burst in then, breaking the moment as they swarmed around Vincent, checking vitals and responses. But something fundamental had shifted, the invisible barriers between them crumbling like the walls Vincent had built around his heart. Later that night, as Vincent finally slept naturally, Nora made her decision. She would stay, not out of obligation, but out of choice. The project, the team, the man. They had all become part of a future she now couldn't imagine walking away from. Her phone buzzed with a text from her father. "Is he okay?" "Are you?" She smiled as she typed her response. "He will be." And yes, Dad. For the first time in a long time, I really am. Beyond Contracts 1, year after Nora had walked into Vincent Blackwood's office, 1 year since she'd signed away her freedom to save her father, she stood in the hospital's rehabilitation center, watching history unfold. Across the room, 19-year-old Jasmine Rodriguez sat in the Prometheus exoskeleton, her face a mask of concentration as the device hummed to life. The young college athlete had been paralyzed in a gymnastics accident 8 months earlier, T10 complete spinal cord injury. Traditional medicine had given her a 5% chance of ever walking again. "Ready?" Vincent asked gently, standing beside the girl with a tablet displaying her neural readings. Jasmine nodded, her mother clutching her hand. "Remember, this is just the first session," Nora reminded them. "The neural pathways need time to—" Her words died as Jasmine's right foot lifted slightly, then settled back on the floor. "I did it," the girl whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I moved it. I actually moved it." The room erupted in controlled celebration, medical staff noting readings while Jasmine's family embraced. Through the observation window, Nora could see the rest of the team watching. Josephine and Thomas exchanging high fives while Russell wiped away tears. Vincent moved to stand beside Nora, his hand finding hers discreetly. "This is just the beginning," he murmured. "Olivia would be proud," Nora replied, squeezing his fingers. "So proud of what you've accomplished." His smile, once so rare, came easily now. "What we've accomplished. None of this happens without you." Later that evening, as the facility quieted, Nora found herself drawn to the lake behind the residence wing. The water reflected the early autumn stars, a slight chill in the air hinting at the changing season. "I thought I'd find you here." Vincent's voice came from behind her. He draped his jacket over her shoulders, the subtle scent of his cologne enveloping her. "Contemplating our success?" "Contemplating change," she replied, leaning back against him as his arms encircled her waist. "My contract ended yesterday." She felt him tense slightly. "I know. 1 year," she mused. "It seemed like a lifetime when I signed those papers. And now—" She turned in his embrace, studying the face that had become beloved to her, no longer the cold mask of the businessman, but the complex, passionate visage of the man she'd come to love. "Now it feels like we're just getting started." She reached up to trace the line of his jaw. "The Prometheus project is moving into full clinical trials. We have 14 more patients scheduled over the next 6 months. And what about Nora Winters? What does she want now that she's a free woman?" The vulnerability in his question made her heart ache. Despite everything they'd shared over the past year, working side by side, healing her father, the nights spent talking until dawn, the gradual transformation of professional respect into something far more profound, Vincent still feared she might walk away. "I want to continue our work," she said firmly. "I want to see Prometheus help hundreds, thousands of patients." Relief washed over his features. "The position of Chief Rehabilitation Officer is yours. Full autonomy, research budget, whatever team you need." "And?" she prompted, waiting. Vincent's brow furrowed. "And a substantial salary increase, of course." Nora laughed, the sound carrying across the water. "That's not what I meant." Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by a rare flash of uncertainty. "Nora, I'm not good at personal negotiations. Professional ones, yes, but this... It matters too much for me to get wrong." She took his hand, placing it over her heart. "No negotiations. No contracts, just truth. What do you want, Vincent? Beyond Prometheus, beyond Blackwood Innovations." "You," he said simply, the single word holding a universe of meaning. "I want mornings with coffee and biomedical journals. Arguments about neural pathway mapping that turn into dinner plans. Your smile when you prove me wrong, which is distressingly often. Your hand in mine when the doubts come. You, Nora, just you." She rose on tiptoes. pressing her lips to his in a kiss that sealed promises no contract could ever contain. Good answer, Mr. Blackwood. 6 months later, Nora stood in her father's backyard, watching him demonstrate his newfound strength to Vincent by splitting logs for the fire pit. The two men had developed an unlikely friendship, bound by their shared appreciation for Nora and, unexpectedly, a mutual interest in classical literature. "He's different with you," her father observed later, as Vincent took a business call inside the house. "Lighter somehow." "We're different together," Nora corrected, helping him arrange kindling for the evening fire. "That's the point. When are you going to make it official?" Thomas asked, nodding toward the delicate ring on her left hand, Vincent's grandmother's emerald, given to her the previous month during a surprise weekend in Kyoto. "When the first wave of trials is complete," she explained. "Another 3 months. We both want to focus on the patients right now." Her father shook his head, smiling. "Only you two would schedule romance around medical breakthroughs." Vincent emerged from the house, sliding his phone into his pocket with an apologetic smile. "The Tokyo team sends good news. Their first patient took 20 steps today." Nora's heart swelled with pride. 20. That's incredible progress for week 3. As the evening deepened into night, the three of them sat around the crackling fire, sharing stories and plans for the future. Vincent's arm rested comfortably around Nora's shoulders, his earlier corporate stiffness long abandoned in private moments. "Have I ever properly thanked you?" he asked softly, as her father dozed in his chair across the flames. "For what?" "For signing that ridiculous contract. For seeing past the facade. For teaching me that control isn't the same as strength." Nora rested her head against his shoulder, watching sparks rise toward the star-filled sky. "I signed for my father," she admitted. "But I stayed for something else entirely." "What's that?" She turned to meet his gaze, finding in it the same wonder she felt every day at the unexpected journey that had brought them together. "The chance to build something that would last longer than any contract," she whispered, "something that heals more than broken bodies." Vincent's kiss was gentle, a promise of tomorrows stretching endlessly before them, tomorrows they would create together, word by word, choice by choice, heartbeat by heartbeat. Beyond the terms of an agreement signed in desperation lay the boundless territory of a life chosen in love, a contract of the heart that required no signature, no witness, no end date, just two people who had learned that sometimes the greatest healing comes from the most unexpected sources, and sometimes the person you think you're saving is the one who saves you in return.